Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. I had spent the entire week eagerly anticipating the surprise I had planned for Julia. With Max, our 3-year-old, finally asleep in his crib, I felt a rare moment of peace. Julia had asked me to stay home with Max while she attended a work party. I had gladly agreed, eager to handle the night shift so she could enjoy herself. Julia and I had been married for almost 7 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I trusted her implicitly. She'd mentioned that her friend Laura would be at the party, so if she needed anything, Laura would be there to help. I was glad Julia had someone she felt comfortable with at the event. As the evening progressed, I decided to go ahead with my surprise. I had arranged for a trusted babysitter, Angela, to come over and take care of Max. I wanted to join the party later, as a special treat for Julia. It had been a while since we'd been out together, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity. I arrived at the venue, an upscale restaurant with twinkling lights and a lively atmosphere. I checked my watch, it was already past 8. I scanned the room for Julia, hoping to catch her off guard with my surprise. The room was filled with chatter and laughter, but I couldn't spot her. I decided to call her. The phone rang a few times before she answered. "Hey, Julia, it's me. Just wanted to see if you needed anything," I said, trying to sound casual. "Oh, hey. I'm fine," Julia's voice sounded slightly strained. "We're just having a great time. Laura is with me, so everything's okay." I noticed a tinge of something I couldn't quite place in her tone, but I brushed it off. I continued to search for her, moving through the crowd. The dim lighting and the constant flow of people made it hard to get a good look at everyone. Finally, I spotted Julia across the room. She was laughing and leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. They seemed unusually close, their body language intimate and comfortable. The man had his arm around her, and she was gazing up at him with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. I felt a pang of unease. I wanted to approach them, but something stopped me. Instead, I observed from a distance. The man's face was familiar, but I couldn't place him immediately. Determined to understand what was going on, I decided to approach the man. Julia saw me coming and her expression shifted from laughter to surprise. "Michael," I said, forcing a polite tone, "can we talk for a moment?" Michael looked startled. Sure. Let's step outside." We moved to a quieter part of the restaurant. Julia followed but kept her distance. "Michael," I began, "how long have you and Julia been seeing each other?" His face went through a series of emotions before he finally spoke. "Look, I didn't mean for this to happen. Julia and we started seeing each other a few months ago. I thought you knew." I felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath me. "Julia, is this true?" Julia's eyes welled up with tears. "Yes, it's true. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could fix things before you found out." My heart ached with betrayal. "You thought you could fix things? Julia, I trusted you. How long did you plan on keeping this from me?" Julia couldn't meet my gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought we could work things out, but they just got complicated." I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I need some space," I said, turning away from them. "I can't do this right now." I left the party, my mind swirling with confusion and pain. The surprise I had planned now felt like a cruel joke, and the person I thought I knew best had become a stranger in the blink of an eye. After my brief and devastating confrontation with Julia and Michael, I was overwhelmed. I left the party and wandered the streets for a while, trying to clear my head. The reality of the situation was sinking in, but I couldn't shake the urge to understand more. Julia had been my partner for years, and this betrayal felt like a punch to the gut. The pain and confusion gnawed at me, and I decided to go back to the party, hoping to gather more information or perhaps find some semblance of clarity. I slipped back into the venue, trying to avoid Julia and Michael while I scanned the crowd for familiar faces. I spotted Laura, one of Julia's friends, standing near the bar. She was deep in conversation with another guest, but I recognized her immediately. I approached cautiously. "Laura," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you have a minute?" Laura looked surprised but nodded. "Sure, what's up?" "You seemed a bit out of place earlier." "I'm not sure where to start," I began, feeling a knot form in my throat. I found out some things tonight about Julia and Michael. I'm trying to piece it all together." Laura's face fell as she took in my words. "Oh no. You're talking about Michael from work, right?" "Yeah, that's the one," I confirmed. "I saw them together, and Julia admitted they'd been seeing each other for months." Laura looked down, struggling to find the right words. "I had no idea it was that serious. I remember seeing Julia and Michael together at the concert a while back. They seemed close, but I didn't think much of it. Julia mentioned it was a work outing. The news hit me like a cold wave." "You saw them at the concert?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Laura nodded. "Yes. They were very affectionate, and I thought it was unusual, but Julia never said anything about it. I guess it makes sense now." I felt my heart sink even further. The concert that Julia had described as a simple social event was now revealed as a pivotal moment in their affair. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, trying to manage a strained smile. "It helps to understand more." Laura gave me a sympathetic look. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. If you need anything or want to talk more, I'm here." I thanked her and walked away, feeling even more disoriented. I found a quiet corner of the venue and took a deep breath, trying to process everything. The betrayal felt more profound now that I knew it wasn't a recent development but something that had been growing for months. As I stood there, Julia eventually found me. Her eyes were red, and she looked both anxious and regretful. "I know you're angry," she started, her voice trembling. "I should have told you everything from the start. I'm so sorry." I looked at her, struggling to maintain my composure. "Julia, I don't even know where to begin. This isn't just about Michael. It's about everything you didn't tell me, every lie you kept." Julia's face crumpled. "I was scared. I thought I could fix things before you found out. I didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head, feeling a deep sense of loss. "You've already hurt me. This was never about fixing things. It was about honesty. And you failed at that." With that, I turned and walked out of the party. The evening had started with plans for a romantic surprise, but it had ended in heartbreak and disillusionment. The pain of the betrayal was almost too much to bear, and I knew that finding a way forward would be an incredibly difficult journey. The lingering ache in my chest was almost unbearable as I walked away from Julia and Michael. The evening had unraveled into a painful discovery, and I needed to process what I had learned. The revelation that Julia and Michael had been involved for months, starting from that concert, was a crushing blow. I retreated to a quieter corner of the venue, hoping to find some peace. The room was still bustling, the noise of conversation and laughter echoing around me. I leaned against a wall, feeling numb, when I noticed an older gentleman in a corner booth who had been observing me with a concerned expression. He approached me cautiously. "You seem troubled. Is everything all right?" I looked up, trying to mask my distress. "Not really. I've just had a tough night." The man introduced himself as George, a retired journalist who had come to the party as a guest of one of the hosts. He was kind, with a comforting presence that made it easier for me to open up. "Do you want to talk about it?" George offered. "Sometimes sharing can help." I hesitated but then nodded. "It's about my wife, Julia. I found out she's been seeing someone else. It's been going on for months, and I'm just trying to piece together what's happened." George's expression turned sympathetic. "I understand. Relationships can be complicated. If you don't mind me asking, when did you first suspect something?" I sighed deeply. "I didn't suspect anything at first. Julia mentioned this concert a while back, said it was a work outing, but now I'm learning it was something more." George's eyebrows furrowed. It's often these little details that reveal more than we expect. I was at that concert too. I remember seeing Julia and Michael together, but I didn't think much of it. My heart raced. You saw them there? Yes, George confirmed. They seemed quite close, but I didn't know their connection. They were very affectionate with each other, which struck me as unusual, but I assumed it was just friendly camaraderie. I felt a surge of anger and confusion. So, it's true then. They've been seeing each other for months. Julia's been lying to me all this time. George placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry you're going through this. The truth is sometimes harsher than we expect. It's important to take care of yourself and find a way to navigate through this pain. I nodded, appreciating his words. Thank you for telling me what you saw. It helps to know I'm not imagining things. George gave me a reassuring smile. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Sometimes, talking to someone who understands can make a difference. I thanked him and left the venue, my mind swirling with the weight of the new information. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they formed was painful and unsettling. As I walked through the quiet streets, my thoughts were a chaotic mix of betrayal and sorrow. The affair had started far earlier than I had known, and Julia's deception ran deeper than I had imagined. The one simple event had now become a series of painful revelations, and my sense of trust had been shattered. I knew I needed to confront Julia and Michael directly, to address the truth and find a path forward, but for now, I was left to grapple with the overwhelming emotions that came with discovering the full extent of her betrayal. The days following the party were a blur of emotional turmoil. The reality of Julia's affair had settled heavily on my shoulders, and the once familiar world now felt alien and hostile. I spent my days in a haze, grappling with a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. Every corner of our home seemed to echo the weight of the betrayal, reminding me of the life we had built together. The night after the party, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers and documents strewn across it. My mind was fixated on one thing, making a decision about our future. I needed to confront Julia and Michael, to bring some form of closure to the situation. The following morning, I called Julia to arrange a meeting. My voice was calm but firm when I spoke. Julia, we need to talk. Can we meet this afternoon? Of course, she replied, her voice tinged with anxiety. Where would you like to meet? We decided on a quiet cafe that was a neutral ground. When Julia arrived, her face was drawn, and she seemed apprehensive. She took a seat across from me, her hands clasped tightly on the table. Julia, I began, trying to keep my tone steady, I've given this a lot of thought. The last few days have been incredibly painful, and I've come to a decision. Julia's eyes filled with tears. I know I've made mistakes, and I'm so sorry for the hurt I've caused. But please, let's try to work this out. I shook my head slowly. Julia, this isn't something we can just fix. Trust is a cornerstone of any relationship, and you've broken it in a way that can't be repaired. I've decided to get a divorce. Her face crumpled, and she reached across the table, her voice pleading. Please, don't do this. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to make things right. We can go to counseling, we can. I pulled my hand away gently. It's not about what we can do now. It's about what's been done. You've been involved with Michael for months, and you've lied to me continuously. I can't continue in this marriage knowing that the foundation of our relationship has been so fundamentally shattered. Julia looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I understand. I just wish things could be different. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. I wish that too, but we have to face reality. I'm going to start the process for divorce. I'll arrange for the necessary paperwork and notify our families. We left the cafe with a heavy silence between us. The decision to divorce was painful but necessary. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness, knowing that this was the only viable path forward. In the days that followed, I focused on handling the practical aspects of the separation. I reached out to a lawyer, began organizing our finances, and started preparing for the difficult conversations with our families. Each step felt like a small victory in regaining control over my life. One evening, I sat at my desk, the weight of everything finally hitting me. I began writing, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto paper. It was a way to process the emotions I couldn't fully express in conversation. The writing became a form of therapy, helping me navigate through the pain and confusion. As I wrote, I found solace in expressing my grief and anger. It was a way to make sense of the betrayal and to begin healing. I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, filled with uncertainty and heartache, but writing gave me a sense of purpose and direction. Reflecting on the future, I felt deeply troubled but also strangely hopeful. The betrayal had left a significant scar, but through the process of confronting it and making difficult decisions, I was finding a path toward recovery. It was clear that the journey ahead would be long and arduous, but I was determined to face it with resilience and courage.